board. H3 is a follow-up agenda item from once it was on the agenda once before. It was on, I don't remember, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, I don't recall the date. It was on as a result of my fulfilling my obligation pursuant to the county ordinance, which called for me to propose an amended ordinance to this board when there is an increase in the salary of a Superior Court judge, such that it proposed at least an amendment to the ordinance which sets your salaries. And so we were on whatever date that was. There was discussion. There was a motion to table the issue until such time as the remainder of the bargaining units were negotiated and concluded, and it remained on the table. As you well know, today, earlier in discussion and action, the remainder of the bargaining units were acted upon and approved, and so I took it upon myself to take the matter off the table and replace it on the agenda as previously instructed. That's why you see it here today. I put it on in precisely the same form as it was on once before, which is what the ordinance as it currently is written and in place calls for, and that is to propose a change. This would be 25% of a Superior Court judge's salary. That is approximately $47,000 and change, if I have my numbers right. And I know there was some public comments, board comments made at the time. A discussion last about whether they would support that particular amount of an increase or not, but also in some brief discussions and comments from individual board members since, and two of them only. I have taken the liberty of proposing another draft ordinance, which you did not officially ask me to do, but I took it upon myself to do so. You can do with it what you want. It is included as the second attachment to this item, and it's an ordinance which contemplates an increase to your salaries in an amount equal to that which the bargaining units were negotiated, and that's the roads, the UPEC, the mid-management. Generally speaking, that's 2.5% upon ratification, 2% this coming July, and then 3% the following July. And like I said, I took it upon myself to propose that, and the question is if you have any questions of me.
Mr. Burns, questions by the board of Mr. Chairman?
Well, Mr. Chairman, since that last discussion, and one of the things that has always irritated me has been this 25% trigger thing that's been in the ordinance, and I believe it dates back to sometime in the early mid-90s. It was something I know Gary Lemke at the time was on the board, and Mr. Bixby was relatively new as the county administrator, and they proposed it as a means to try to make it less controversial. But as far as I'm concerned, they embedded that into the ordinance that every time the judge's salary goes up, the county council brings this back. And it's like, why don't you just go be an Iranian and flog yourself? Because in the 20 years or so since that's been on the books, I tell you, it's never been acted on by the board, and all it does is create hate and discontent, and it really creates an uproar. So if nothing else, what the board needs to do is to remove that trigger from the ordinance. It has no business being there, and all it does, if the board's going to take a salary increase, do what the employees do in terms of that amount from time to time. This board hasn't had its salary adjusted since around 2002 or somewhere in there in the early 2000s. And in terms of the cost of living type of increases. So I think at that point in time, if the board wants to do that, I would be inclined to support the alternate, but I'm in no way in favor of the first one that was presented. And I think more importantly, we need to eliminate that trigger so county council doesn't come back and bring that back like they've done from time to time.
Thank you, gentlemen. I agree wholeheartedly with you. 25% needs to be removed.
Yeah, regardless.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I apologize. I neglected to mention that I have in the second draft ordinance, that's removed. The trigger is out. remembering comments from the board once before.
If not, the public, Ms. Spencer, would you come to the podium and state your name?
I hate agreeing with you, but that's,
Don't make it a habit.
believe me, I won't, but that's long overdue, getting taken it out. Each of you represent about 4,500. You really look nice when you smile.
Thank you.
Each of you represent approximately 4,500 people in Lassen County. Plymouth County Supervisors represent approximately 4,000 people each. In 1998, your salary was $18,000 with a declining population. You have stated publicly that you haven't had a raise since 2002. This is blatantly false, and Mr. Chapman knows that. The Lassen County Times even supported this claim, which, you know, he's been your best, the Lassen County Times has been your best enabler because they don't print anything except what you want them to print. In 2013, you amended Ordinance 532C from $33,263 to $35,485. But that's not what your payroll records indicate that you were paid. And we have sheets on all of you. I mean, we put Jim Chapman's because it's the most gross example of what you're doing. But we have sheets on all of you.
I thought I was going to talk on that.
We thought about it, but you have a nice smile.
Thank you.
You didn't.
I'm trying to smile more often. Will I get paid more if I smile?
Yes. You haven't noticed your name in the website lately, have you?
I don't look at it.
Oh, good.
I got better things to spend my time on.
Oh, that makes me feel good. You did not want to go through public hearings to change your salary, so you quietly and unethically changed your salary in the budget. The 2015-2016 budget reflects this, which you raised your salary to over $2,000 in the budget. You raised it from $35,000 to $37,000. So on July 1st, you gave yourself a raise, and you've been doing this since 2002.
If I may, I think you're speaking of step increases or longevity increases.
I'm talking about your paycheck.
Maybe.
I'm talking about your paycheck.
We
You
did
give
not-
yourself.
We have not been voting ourselves in very.
No, because you can do it clandestinely now in the budget, which is kind of unique. Ordinance 532C, approved by you on September 11, 2013, capped your annual salary at $35,485, and you're all making more than that. And the public should know that with your $17,000 benefits package, and that's for public records. That's your payroll history, public records. Mr. Chapman and Mr. Pyler are they get over $53,000 now, and Mr. Hammond's close to that. Your budgets indicate that you have been giving yourself these clandestine increases since 2002. You bank the money, Bob. You bank the money. You get a paycheck with all this extra money in there, and it's a pay increase. Since 2002, these budget payroll increases have been from 1.5% to 9%. The public should know what you're really earning, what you're really taking home, and it's so much more than. I mean, I think you should be paid. I really do. I think you should be paid. But like you've all said before, you need to be competitive. And you are competitive at the salary that you gave yourself in 2013 compared to counties that are Plymouth County, Sierra County. Those are competitive salaries. And now you want, Mr. Burns wants to give you another $10,000, raise it to $47,260, an additional $10,000, which makes you not competitive. You know, Mr. Hempel sits up there for a whole year, and I think he's given 2 reports on what he's done for his district. And I've come before you and asked each of you, what have you done for your districts? I mean, other than take the vacation meetings, what have you done for Westwood? What have you done for District 1? Nobody responds. You think by just sitting up there that you have value more than a competitive wage. You don't. There are over 400 people, employees in this county. People like Susan, people like Melody, people like Dean and Nancy and Diana. They do the work. You don't do the work. You show up here, you talk to a few people, maybe answer a few phone calls. You're being paid enough. This is an insult to want, after your increase, your $2,000 increase on July 1st, to come back with a regular ordinance and ask for $10,000 more. It's just, I mean, I don't know that you have any shame. I really don't. Know your value here, you know? And get a county council that knows what he's doing, for heaven's sakes.
Thank you for your comments. I think if you spoke to her wife, they would be a little disagreeable with you.
Can I call her? Can I call her?
You can call my wife. Yeah, 257-5797.
Thanks, I'll call her.
Should we get Gene to video that?
Everybody knows the first version.
I think the wives would have a different opinion that we do nothing. Okay, thank you for your comments, Mrs. Spencer. Jim?
I have a question, and it's for Diana. Mrs. Spencer says that I'm being paid $53,000.
I'm upset. I thought I was above you. I thought I'm below.
No, I just want to know. I mean,
You're right below him.
Am I being paid $53,000?
I don't have it in front of me, but no.
I mean, I was going to say, because for the last 3 years, my little take-home check that I get used to be about $900 every couple of weeks during, we pay every 2 weeks.
Your gross pay is $40,438 plus $17,298 in benefits.
I'm not being, I mean, might be in terms of, you're talking to me taking home $53,000.
No, I'm not talking.
I mean, my paycheck that I've been taking home has actually been getting smaller over the last few years. And I just was wondering if there was a mistake, because if I'm getting paid $53,000 as my salary, then I think my paycheck has been shortchanged somewhere. So anyway, for what it's worth. Thank you. I just wanted to know from Diana that she's the auditor.
Mrs. Spencer, if you would like my wife's cell phone, it's 249-4573.
Wait a minute, Bob, give it to me again.
249-4573.
Thank you.
Chairman, if you need a place to stay tonight.
That did go out to everybody. You know.
There is a safe house maintained.
Okay. With that, we will, any more comments from the public? Thank you for the invitation. I may be there. But I actually know how this conversation will go. And I won't need a place to stay. I won't have them. Okay, we'll any more comments from the public? Seeing none, I would say I would support the ordinance to give us the same pay increase as all county employees have received. 2.5% to 3% over a period of 3 years, which I obviously will only see the 2% since I've only got 1 year left here. So, anyhow, what's the pleasure of the board?
Procedurally speaking, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, sir.
since this is an ordinance, it would require introduction, a motion to introduce, and it would also require a reading or a motion to waive the reading, and then it would require a vote on adoption at a meeting no less than 5 days from today. And I would propose that if we see an introduction and a reading or waiver thereof, that it go on for next week's. That's assuming certain
If
things.
that all happens, then it's another 60 days before it can go into
Correct.
effect.
By law.
Not the standard 30 days.
Correct.
Otherwise.
Okay, you've heard comments from council, that procedure. Would somebody like to make a motion to start the process? It's just odd. Give yourself it's a weird feeling.
You know, it used to be, if I understand it right, it used to be that the salaries of the supervisors were set by the legislature. No? Then I'm
The
looking for
supervisors
something
are
else.
the only body left in the state that actually votes on its own salary. Everybody,
Currently, yes.
Well, even in the last 40 years.
Yeah.
So the legislature, everybody has somebody else setting their salary, and it's something the legislature should address. So the bottom line is, the buck stops here as far as this. So it is odd. And I have to say, the first time I voted for one was my first year on the board. The board raised its pay from $747 to $797, and it doesn't make people happy when you do. And I, for the most part, have voted. Actually, I think every time since then, including the ordinance that put in that trigger mechanism, I voted no. So. You don't have to accept the pay raise. You can do it. I think in this particular case, since Bob and I are leaving, I think that the next board, the future board, deserves the consideration. Board members, I don't think, run for the pay. They run to serve the people and do the work that needs to be done. But at some point in time, you have to either you keep up with the employees or you don't.
Supervisor, I'll allow be part of this process.
Well, if it was introduced, he's here next week, so
All we're doing is introducing it.
yeah.
Okay.
He would have to vote on it next week when he's here.
It has plenty of chances for public comment and board member comment and so on. It's not like we're going to pass it today and it's done deal.
Right.
We're just going to introduce it, all we're doing today.
Okay.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
We have a second?
For discussion.
We have a second for discussion? We'll second. We got a motion and a second.
That's a motion to introduce.
Yes.
Keep the process straight, Ken.
Let's do one at a time if we can, please. Motion to introduce first, and then we'll get to either reading or a waiver of the reading.
And we have a second of that motion to introduce. That's what we would be voting on next.
Yes.
Okay, we're having a discussion now. Okay, any discussion?
I definitely want to discuss this in depth. I got to tell you, I've never been in a position in my life to vote myself money, and it's a different feeling
Well,
to
you're
me.
doing it for yourself. You try to do it every time you raise the price of the product you sell.
That's a little different. That's a little different, but it puts us in an
It is. It's uncomfortable.
uncomfortable position.
Pretty much. The last time we did it was 2002, if my memory is correct.
It isn't.
And I have no knowledge
Correct.
of what.
Even if I smile?
Even if you smile, it's not right.
We would at Diane.
2013.
2013
Was the
And
last
that was
increase.
because of the change in the pension law.
Oh, yeah.
EPMC.
That is correct. That's because we had, okay. But
We
before
swapped-
that,
we swapped-
an actual increase like we're doing today was
2002.
2000.
And I would want to point out, I think this is the relevant part of it. Since 2002, the regular employees of the county, and there are different groups, and it will vary slightly, but have, for the most part, have received about a 30% adjustment in their pay. So the pay that employees have today compared to what their pay was in 2002. Now, they went for long periods of time when there were no adjustments made at all. But in terms of salaries being adjusted, and that was what was shared by the personnel department. So the board has foregone those adjustments in terms of keeping pace with the rest of the employees. Now, in my particular case, like I said, I voted against most of the ordinances. And the tack I took, because I didn't feel comfortable with it either, and Tom, you're spot on, is that I wrote a letter or signed a letter and gave it to the auditor declining or leaving my pay where it was at. And I waited until the next election cycle was completed. And when you pay your fee and run for re-election, it's based on what that pay is. And I figured the people elected me at that point in time based on what that new salary is. So from that point forward, whatever the pay adjustment was, I took advantage of. But as far as voting, to just give it to me and do that, I probably would vote no, and that's how I dealt with it over the last 35 years.
And it's only fair to say that all employees of Lassen County, including us, the pay raises have not been that beneficial to give you a big pay raise. A lot of it just compensated for the increase in
insurance and everything
insurance
else.
and so on. And that's what the 2015 or 13 was. Nobody ended up with more money. It just balanced out, and that's why it was done.
Well,
How do you explain the
Chairman, if I may.
$2,100 you just got on July 1st? How do you justify the $2,100 you gave yourself on July 1st in this budget? That's a lot of money.
The budget appropriation does not equate to an increase in pay or what they see in their paychecks, if there was one.
I am not aware of that increase. My paycheck does not show up. My paycheck has increased in the last year. It has not increased.
There's a fundamental difference between an appropriation and an expenditure.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Thank you, Nate.
I feel obliged to confirm what Mr. Chapman has said in the sense that, yes, there was the flip in 2013 as a result of, what was it, EPMC and Tetra?
Yeah, it was
whatever.
the state law doesn't allow a jurisdiction to pay an employee's retirement contribution.
Correct.
And that had been a negotiated benefit that went back to the 60s or sometime long before I came on board. It goes back a long ways, and so we had to basically, all the employees' pay across the board were adjusted to, because we couldn't do it for them, so we gave them that, what would have been the equivalent share, so they could make that payment.
They had to make the payment, so their paychecks got smaller.
Right,
So
and
we
so
just counted that.
we offset the
Including
shift,
our paycheck.
including ours, yes. That was what 2013.
The point I'm feeling obliged to confirm is the idea that since 2002, which is the last salary increase that I'm aware of that this board saw, each of the bargaining units, each 3 years, has gone up in an amount equal to whatever they negotiated and this board agreed to. So by and large, the salary of the county staff has increased and the board has remained the same, and it is 2.5%, 2%, and 3%, which is the same as roads and UPEC and mid-management, or I'm sorry, I forgot the name now, but management professionals, thank you. That is part of that second ordinance.
What the board did in 2002 was took the same salary adjustment that all the employees got that year, but that was the last time the board did that.
Okay, any more discussion? Is the board ready to vote? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
On the motion to introduce.
Motion to introduce.
Supervisor Chapman?
Aye.
Supervisor Hemphill?
Aye.
Supervisor Hammond?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyle?
Aye. Motion passes.
Is there a motion to read or waive reading?
Well, that's done at the time you do the adoption next
We
week.
could do it next week, too.
Well, that gives,
Either way. That's fine.
yeah, and that gives Aaron,
That's fine.
but I think when you adopt it is when you waive the reading.
Also, there would, well, I'll deal with it as it comes next week. Okay.
Okay. Are we doing with that agenda item?
The important
Yes.
thing, I think, with this ordinance is it eliminates or get rid of that trigger.
Yes, it's
That's not in there.
It is not.
You'll
That's the
bring
point,
that
it's
back.
not in there.
It's not in there. So you'll bring that back to,
No, it's in this one here that you just introduced.
no.
Wait, so we understand. The trigger that was spoken of as in the existing ordinance was removed from the proposed ordinance, which was just introduced.
It's in there.
Trigger is removed. The trigger, let's make sure we identify what the trigger is. The trigger is that when the Superior Court judges receive an increase in their pay, that the county council is obliged to,
That's not in
it
the
is not in
ordinance,
it.
so it don't count no more.
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, this-
If you adopt it next week.
So this ordinance here removes that, this
Correct.
proposed ordinance removes the
Correct.
trigger. I thought you said you
Yes.
took it
I
out of
was
this.
looking for the wording in here, but the wording's not.
It's been removed. So the only time, assuming this ordinance is adopted next week, and that's a big assumption, and it becomes essentially the law of the county, the only way supervisors' salaries can be changed again, it won't come up periodically as the Superior Court judges have an increase. It'll just come up as you direct
So
it
that
come up.
paragraph that was in there
Yes.
is no longer in
Correct.
the new ordinance.
Correct.
Which iteration are you talking about? I know you supplied on in the packet 3 or 4 different iterations. Could you identify which iteration we're going to vote on, or they're going to vote on?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, because I'm not a board member, and I know that you haven't wanted me to respond before. So do you want me to respond today?
It's up to him.
Yes, it certainly is.
Yes, it is, and you need to raise your hand, let me call on you to keep everything organized and managed, but I will allow your question to Mr. Burns, I think, is the only ordinance I have is
Right.
the 2.5, and 3.
There were 2
Two.
included
There
as
was
part
2.
of the packet,
Yeah.
and it's
We
the second
rejected the
one.
first one.
Correct.
The old ordinance, 25% of the Superior Court justice is no longer trash.
Well, you introduced today the second ordinance that was part of your packet.
The
Correct.
$47,000 one.
No.
No.
No, that's the one we're
Contrary to what?
taking out.
No. That's not what.
Go ahead, Mr. Burns, and explain. I don't want no misunderstanding to the public. I think Mr. Spencer is the only one that does not understand, but go ahead and go through it again.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to go through it for you, sir, and the remainder of the board. I'm not certain that any amount of explanation will change the degree of misinterpretation that's going on, but let me try. There were 2 draft ordinances that were proposed for today. The first one is essentially a reprinting, if you will, of the one that was offered 2 months ago, which is consistent with my duty under county code to present. The second one, which is attached to the agenda, as I think it was identified as COCO 2, and the hyperlink, thank you, Madam Clerk, is a draft ordinance which deals, it removed the trigger. It didn't increase your salary to $47,000 and change. It increased or proposed an increase in your salary in an amount equal to that which roads and UPEC and management professionals negotiated through this most recent negotiation process, which kind of summing it up amounts to 2.5% initially, 2% more in July of this coming year, and another 3% in July of 2017.
Well, I think
Sir.
the operative paragraph is right here as the first one.
Yes, it
It's
is.
not a question of waiving, but it's easy to just read the paragraph.
Yes.
Each member of the Board of Supervisors shall receive an annual salary of $35,485. That's the current salary, effective at the beginning of the pay period, which commences February 28, 2016, which would be that period after the 60 days plus whatever time we have between now and then to adopt it. Each member shall receive an increase to their annual salary of 2.5% to $36,372, effective at the beginning of the pay period, which commences July 3rd, 2016, which is that July 1st increase. For the regular employees, each member of the board shall receive an increase to their annual salary of 2% to $37,099, effective at the beginning of the pay period, which commences July 2nd, 2017. Each member of the Board of Supervisors shall receive an increase to their annual salary of 3% to $38,212. So that's what was introduced in terms of using the same formula for the various bargaining units. So it's not $53,000, it's not $47,000, it's not that. The base salary of the board members would be in that particular range, and that reflects the current salary extended through the same negotiated periods with the employees.
I know the ink isn't dry on that copy, but could I get a copy of that?
It's in the packet. It was made available online and published to the world. and it has been available since the 72 hours prior to the holding of this hearing.
May I,
Meeting. Excuse me,
may
meeting.
I
So
look
I
at it?
today.
May I look at it then?
I'll loan you mine for me.
Sure, probably in
I have one highlighted.
reminder there. Yeah.
I don't know why it's an issue, Mrs. Spencer. You seem to be a little confused in the process.
I'm not confused at all.
You're very confused. But whatever.
You know, and while she's looking, I think it's important to read the remaining part of it, because this may is where she mixes apples and oranges. Members of the board will receive no other benefits except those extended to all other elected officials, including but not limited to health benefits, workers' compensation insurance, life insurance, longevity pay, and the California Public Employee Retirement System,
Thank you.
excluding sick leave, vacation, and holiday pay. So, you know, when you take that as a full package, you know, there's benefit there, but the actual salary benefit is much less than what has been represented.
Okay, I think we're done with that agenda item.
That concludes. Yes.
I concluded. Thank you, Mr. Burns.
Thank you.
Next, we move on to H4, information for the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Egan.
Couple things, Mr. Chairman. This evening at 5 o'clock, the Employee Recognition Committee has put together a Christmas party at Jensen Hall for all the employees and their families. I would like to take the opportunity to personally thank the Recognition Committee. They do an awesome job throughout the year and especially at Christmas time. And I personally appreciate their efforts, and I would suggest if you see members of those, just to thank them for doing that. I'll look forward to seeing you all there at 5. The second thing, along with Supervisor Chapman, attended CSAC in Monterey last week. It was a good meeting. Mr. Chairman covered a great deal of the program. There were a couple of interesting sessions that weren't really...
They had secret CAO meetings that wouldn't invite the rest of us.
Yeah, and I can't tell you what went on in there, but I can tell you a little bit. They had one particular session about just dealing with different personality types and how you interact and build consensus. It was a little bit non-traditional, but it was. I think it was helpful. May help me in assessing your different personality traits and dealing with all of you.
And Mr. Egan was a square, I got to be a triangle, but you didn't want to be a circle, especially if you were a squiggle.
So,
That was pretty.
it was good. The final item was, as I've mentioned to the board, we're scheduling a meeting of the MODOC Lassen Flood Control District for December 17th in Aden. I'm also in Aden.
What date?
December 17th, next Thursday.
Until the 10th.
I'm sorry?
10th? What happened to the 10th?
MODOC was unable to, their supervisors were unable to.
At what time?
We haven't set the time at all. We'll be emailing, of course, the agenda and everything, and all that to the board. I'm also in the morning. It should be mid-morning. Hopefully, we will be able to put together an agenda for also a joint board meeting, which will be a separate meeting on the same day, same place, regarding issues of mutual concern to MODOC and Lassen, since we'll all be in the same place. Those would include some forest issues with the Lassen and MODOC forests, potentially updating their forest plan. More to come on that, but I thought I'd just mention that because so we can plan accordingly. That's all I have. Oh, one more thing. The sheriff, who's in the audience, experienced some difficulty last week at the jail with some facilities there, in particular the boiler, and they're working very diligently to try to come up with a solution there, but there may be some emergency purchases that need to be made if we're out of session, and that becomes an issue. So I just thought I'd alert the board to that.
We've been fighting that boiler for a while.
We have.
No?
No, we've had issues where we're trying to do repairs. We have 2 boilers. We rebuilt one a few years back. But this one, we have a mechanical engineer coming up tomorrow. We've been working with Pete Heimdinger from Public Works. They've been very helpful, so we should have some idea. What we think is it developed an air leak, increased the heat. We're in the area of the leak, warped the door, and some other issues. We just have to figure out what the extent of the damage is, what the repairs need to be. So we should have an answer shortly. But we need to get it running, obviously, because if the other one fails now, we'd be
You have a backup
in
system.
trouble. We have a backup boiler. We have 2 boilers. But obviously, if the backup one fails, we'd be in trouble with jail right now.
But they're both functioning.
No, no, we're all.
Only one of them.
So only one's functioning.
That's what I was trying to get at. Okay. That's all I have.
Sit down.
Thank you.
All right. Meeting adjourned.
Yes, sir.